Awesome. It says that we are now live. I love this. I love going live. And I love having amazing, beautiful, strong, independent women on the show like Miss Janie Terrazas. Welcome to the show, Miss Janie. She's with
What?
us today. Yes, we're going to have so much fun. It's girl talk. We're talking about relationships, love, love, love. And she is here to talk to us today on Girls Guide to Greatness podcast about putting the real in relationships. Janie, I'm super excited to have you. What is going on, girl?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I think it's awesome that you're doing this project because, those of us that have a big mission to spread knowledge and wisdom and empower and uplift. A lot of us want to do that, but not all of us take the time, to actually create content like this, which is great because it unites us and it spreads the message more quickly. And obviously, I mean, I'm all about empowering humanity. But I'm a girl, so it's all about girl power, especially
Yes,
right now. Especially now, the
yes,
world
and
needs feminine touch and that feminine
right.
intelligence. Hmm.
Yeah, and Janie, I didn't even mention to the audience though, but you are a mindfulness coach and you are a relationship coach. And actually, that's how I met you way back when in Texas, San Antonio, Texas, years and years ago, like ages ago. We're not going to age us too much.
I know, right?
But I actually went to you guys when I was ready to put myself out there and find love and all that good stuff. That's how we met. So, and now that's what you do. You continue to help others in this area. So it's pretty exciting to have you.
Yeah, it's crazy. You never know what's going to happen in life. You have this idea and this story. I married someone who was working as a date coach. That's how I met you. And in our relationship, it went from me supporting him as a date coach to us evolving as relationship coaches. But funny enough, as a couple and all couples, anybody who is in this field, whether you're a life coach or relationship coach, we're human. And so we go through the same experiences that people go through. But what was so catastrophic for me was the fact that we were in this line of work and we were helping other couples that when they hit their roadblocks and they started experiencing intense conflict, or one of them strays and goes outside of the relationship, we were there to support them in what that journey looked like. But when it came to it happening to us, um, it was as if something happened to him, something was happening to us. But like most men and women too, they experience like a midlife crisis, they call it, right?
Right.
And I wanted to be able to maneuver that as mindfully as I could, but I didn't have any point of reference. What was really causing though the big rift was that as we both were curious about we were both truth seekers. I started that journey probably in around 2011, where I started wondering like this. I started digging into the systems of the world and seeing how those systems were corrupt and not really helping society and humanity really thrive. You know what I mean? So when I started realizing, I guess we'll say it's like the Matrix. You start to understand that, wow, that movie wasn't just a movie. There's a real thing to this thing. But it's one thing to be a true seeker of the systems of the world. It's a whole nother thing to be a true truth seeker of self, a true truth seeker of the I am, and discovering how are we a part of this greater quantum field that exists, and or the creator, how are we connected to creator? So I went on that journey full force. We were together 10 years, but 2 years into the marriage, um, I had what you would call like a spiritual awakening. And I'm very kid-like in that I'm very curious. Children, we tend to be, we're very trusting, people like us. So I've had to learn how to discern. But when it comes to discovering self and being an explorer of self, those qualities came in really handy. I love learning. I'm comfortable with change. I might believe one thing, but I take in new information and it's malleable. And it's like, oh, well, now, yeah, you can transform. And I thought that this man that I married was just as curious as I was, and also had the same outlook on what creator actually was. But there was a lot that he was I think in denial of, keeping from his own self. I think people show up a certain way because they think it's what you want. And then later, the true colors and characters really start to surface. And if you're going to be in a relationship, your inner childhood wounds and any trauma, any heartache, anything that you have in the past that you have not fully resolved, it is going to show up in your most intimate relationships. Okay. This is what's called shadow work. The ego. The ego is the mind and the body, which is the persona, this identity, this flesh vessel that has recorded a lot of programs and a lot of ideas and concepts that really is shaping our perception of self, our perception, our relation to others and the world at large. And it was as if, it's funny when you have a person like myself and like him, where I can see lots of different perspectives, and I put myself in other people's shoes as much as I possibly can. I know I'm not you, but I want to really understand. And when he was going through this crisis, it was as if I was growing and expanding, and he was kind of wanting to stay in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And where I was sort of in the wrong, right, was wanting to control. I was so excited about what was happening to me and all these things that I was learning, from psychology to physics, and just the downloads. When I say downloads, when you really start to get still and you really start to like ask some serious questions, you will start to get answers. And for whatever reason, and I'm really grateful for this, okay, but everybody has their own idea of what God is. And I think mine is very universal, but for some reason, Jesus was, I feel like he's one of the masters of unconditional love. He really understood what that was about. And that's really the journey that I was on. So when I married my husband, we didn't really know what unconditional love was. I thought we could discover that together. And then when I really started to understand it for myself and follow that, like I was like a true disciplined student of it, and realizing life was for me. And I was so grateful. It was like there were all of these things that he was still wanting to accomplish and wanting to have, and thought that we would already have. And it was as if that was causing him some suffering. And I'm like, but it's all good because look what we do have, and we're going to have this. And I can't imagine what it's like being someone who really overall had more of sort of a pessimistic outlook, to be with somebody who's like radically optimistic. And then of course you start to tap into that awesome unconditional love from God, and you start to realize and embody your power, your passion, and your purpose. You get lit. I was just on fire, and I was experiencing so many miraculous things, and my gifts were igniting. We all have intuitive gifts, and we all are here to deliver something very unique and special, to be like medicine for the world, I guess you could say. And my gift, one of my gifts, is that I have the ability to sense a lot of information from people. We're multifaceted beings, and there's memories and things that happen to us, and our feelings and all this stuff. It's like we have a mental body, an emotional body, a spiritual body, and a physical body. And these three other bodies, mental, emotional, spiritual, impact the physical body. This is like when we're not at ease, it creates disease. So my gift, my line of work was, God was kind of encouraging me, study everything you can about psychology and physiology. And he guided me, or it guided me, whatever you want to call it, source. Because I do feel alpha, omega. God really, creator, is the proton and the electron. It's the masculine and the
Right.
feminine.
Energy, yeah, light.
It's
Mm-hmm.
energy, it's light. There's no gender to it. You know what I mean? But
Absolutely.
I understand. For now, I'll just say, occasionally I'll say he, because it's just
Of course.
my
Me,
natural
yeah, I
way
do the
of
same thing.
doing. So all these beautiful things that he was guiding me to learn were helping me. I was basically healing myself and applying all this stuff to my life and to my daily, work and walk. And that wasn't really happening like with him. And so I was sharing all of this information that I was getting, sacred knowledge and wisdom, ancient stuff that like teaching me about breath and how the blood works and about DNA. And every time I'm learning something from whatever we'll say, from up above, or whether it was a book, I was like diarrheaing of the mouth to him about it all. And going back to those gifts, being able to like sense things in people, that was really interesting. That was something that I had to get accustomed to, and that I had to understand and learn, and how to trust and how to respect, and more importantly, not be afraid to tell people when I was sensing or picking things up, you know.
Right.
And at first, I do body work as well. So aside from relationship coaching and mindfulness coaching and everything, I do have a background as a Reiki master practitioner and emotional freedom technique. I do tapping and reflexology and all these other healing modalities that are for the body, because really you have to, if you're going to deal with pain and trauma, you have to be able to work it out of the mind, the heart, the body, and the spirit. It's all there. So funny enough, all this is happening to me, I start not getting scared and start sharing it with people. And after years of getting so much validation, you really step into the confidence of it. You really start to like own it, you know? And again, very much rooted in humility. Okay. So when me and my partner, or, you know, it's funny, I don't want to even say husband, because I don't really feel like he really was a husband, as horrible as that sounds. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't want to take away from what we had and what he was able to do. But when I made a commitment and when I said yes to that marriage, because I had already been married before, and I was totally fine with not getting married again, just really finding a partner that was like, because it's like, oh, it's a piece of paper, blah, 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 you know what I mean? And so when we said yes, and when I said yes, I really was like in it to win it. And so when he experienced this midlife crisis, at this point, my gifts were very, very strong. And God was telling me, showing me why he was showing up the way he was. And eventually I found out, this was the most difficult part. When he told me that he was having this midlife crisis, he said, I don't know who I am, and I don't know if I want to coach anymore. And I'm desiring other women. And by the way, even though our relationship was like kind of like, our sex life was really still going really strong. And I think maybe the reason why, and I have sex trauma, so that's like a whole nother story in itself. But it was like the one tie and bond that we had. And also because I was feeling him pull away, I was really upping it, you know, like really taking it to another level and trying to be real consistent in that. And it was probably the worst thing that I could have done, at least for me and my soul.
Because you're trying to compensate, right?
Yeah, I was trying to compensate. So then when he was like, I'm desiring other women, that's like a little bit of like a view. Like it's like it really messes with your head, because you're like, wow, like it's, you want more than this. And it wasn't that, it was just he wanted something different. You know, it was like he was like craving that. As a wife, you know, when you hear stuff like that, I was trying to be as understanding as I could. And when God started giving me all the guidance as to where all this was coming from and why he was behaving the way he was and what I was doing to exacerbate things and just all of that, I got excited. I'm like, oh my God, God is giving us the answers to this. This is a time where iron is sharpening iron, and we can reveal what's really going on, heal it in tandem together, because it was as if I could see his beast, and it was like he could see mine, but he didn't want to. And I was like, I'm willing to love you and your beast. Like, let's do this together. You know what I mean? So it was I can laugh about it now, but oh my God, it was so painful. So when he first told me this, I did say, you know, I will leave I will give you your space. Like I felt like I needed to kind of separate myself from him. I was not so much a separation, but I just felt like I couldn't be under the same roof with all of this because I had so much emotion. And I said, I will leave the house. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody else? And he said, no. And then later I found out that he was talking to a couple of people. And so yeah. And even then I was able to have understanding as much as I was pained. Don't get me wrong, I had rage, but it was more this like, Well, even with that, I would still be willing to go and like try to work this out. You know what I mean? Like there's something deeper,
Right.
and he just didn't want to do it. And the reason why I kind of tell a little bit of that story, because I'm sure a lot of women can relate to this, or even men. Sometimes men are in it and the other one's like outie, you know? So we were like oil and water. He wasn't willing and able to listen to the messenger. Like he was very bothered. He had a lot of toxic masculinity. People hear that word a lot. And there was a lot of that he hadn't dealt with, which is what I wanted to help him through, but it couldn't be me. And so
So,
he felt
Janie, what is the I guess we're getting a lot of feedback here, but I'm going to try to move forward. But so, because I know exactly what what you experienced, because I went through a similar situation. I know we talked about that earlier.
yeah,
But as far as people who are in a relationship,
yeah.
that they are that one person like you who really who wants to make it work, but they're stuck. They feel like they're stuck in a relationship where the other partner is not in it to win it. Because this is what happens, right? Over time, we all evolve as individuals. And then of course, our relationship changes as well as partners. And so it's like, how do we set ourselves up to win long term if we know that change is inevitable, right? If we know that sooner or later, possibly something could, happen or trigger a moment or whatever. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, honestly, I think the very first thing that people need to get clear on, and I'm actually going to touch on this. I have a class on Zoom. It's a free class online tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central. If people are interested, they can go to my social media page. The link's on there. They can contact me. But we're going to touch on this. First and foremost, you need to get very clear about what are the virtues. What are the virtues that you really stand for? What does that look like? And what does a healthy relationship look like for you? And what is that going to involve? And what is it going to take? Well, one of the things I'll tell you right now is if you want to be real, REAL, and the reason why that word relationship, it's missing that A, which is this like level of authenticity. We struggle being honest with our own selves. We struggle sometimes effectively communicating with our own selves, much less like another person. That relationship here has to be really solid. And so I think that going back to authenticity, you can't have authenticity without vulnerability and humility. And all the signs were there, Rebecca, but I myself was still broken and didn't really want to recognize the red flags for what they really were. And that was a very humbling experience when I left, my husband and everything, because I got to see God literally was playing back moments of my relationship, and the very thing, the two main things that really like were the destruction of it all had been there the whole time. If somebody, one of the things that he said a lot to me that was just like, oh, well, one, he said, I don't care about understanding. I don't care about understanding. And people have to understand what understanding is. That doesn't mean that I'm going to see things like you and I would do things exactly like you. It's care enough about your partner. You have to have it's called compassionate curiosity. I didn't like how he was showing up, but it's like, well, why did you do that? And where is that really coming from? And where did you pick that up from? And what's the underlying motivation? And what's the impulse? And what's your intention? Oh my God, these questions drove his ass crazy. It was like, oh, it's not that deep. And I'm like, oh, some things kind of are. You know what I mean? And so if you're a very deep person, if you are a very passionate person, you have a lot of emotion and you're open to feelings, and you get with somebody who, one of the other things that he said often was, it was almost as if he took pride to say that he was not an emotional person. But see, when somebody says it, it's like, what do they really mean by that? Are they completely disconnected from feelings, and are they disconnected from empathy? If you are with someone who very ever rarely can see another person's perspective, that's a clear sign. You don't want to be with somebody like that. Okay. You don't
So if
want to
the
do
person is in a relationship, so let's just talk about people who are currently in relationships. So you said
that.
to focus on the virtues, which is good. So if the person is trying to move forward, and what are like maybe some of the top couple of tips that you can tell them? And I know you're going to go over this in your course
Sure.
tomorrow. Yeah. So what they can do right now, and let's just say, they're about to go home. It's the end of the day. It's on a Friday. They're about to go home for the weekend. And there's some friction there. There's some anxiety there. They're like, oh gosh, I'm freaking out because I'm going to be home in 10 minutes and I know he's going to be there. And there's that friction, that heaviness in the home, because I'm speaking from experience. I know exactly what this feels like. So for that particular person, man or, woman, are there a couple of things that they can do right now to kind of help alleviate the situation, to help transform the situation or move forward, and how to get their partner more involved and opened up, and to touch, on the vulnerability, and to touch on the humility and all those other things that you mentioned?
Oh gosh, where do we start? It really depends on it depends on what's going on with them. You know what I mean? Like you said, if there's a lot of stress with kids and work and you got all this stuff, or is
Or
it
it depends
there's
on the situation.
yeah, it depends on the situation. One of the things that is really important for couples to understand, and I'm going to get a little bit like sciency, is our nervous system, okay, the brain, the spinal cord, it syncs up with your partner. Okay, so when men and or women want to say to themselves that they don't want to deal or they don't care about a person's mental or emotional stress, then they have it's almost like we have to be able to understand how to handle that stuff on our own, be able to, this is another thing, people don't really know how to emotionally regulate. That's why another thing with breath comes into play too. Like if you just had a really crazy messed up day and you're about to walk to that door, stay in your car for a minute or two and just take in some deep breaths, breathing in, what is it, how, start to imagine what is the person, how do you want to walk into the door? Like, how do you want to be greeted? And the person that's inside the house waiting for the person to show up also needs to consider their demeanor. We get very careless. We're not very considerate about people's energy and space. We just kind of take it for granted. You know what I mean? So if you're showing up, maybe go in the car, take a few breaths, get grounded. People, most people don't do this kind of thing. And it's not like you're going to come in the door and just be a totally different person. But y'all need to also set the rule that you're not going to engage and get into some conversation or hit something right away when anyone is just coming into the door. You don't want to make the assumption, like, for example, maybe the husband had a really rough day. He's in the car, he's about to get in, and the wife already has the heater, something went out the heater, and she wants to bitch about, Betty at work and all this stuff. They need to create healthy boundaries and respect healthy boundaries. That's part of my safe communication method. It's how can we be honest? We're trying to keep a lot of information in. So what he could do is he could come in, if they don't already have this understanding established, he could come in and just say, give her a hug and be like, hey, listen, I need about 10 or 15 minutes because I have some like heavy duty stuff that's on me and I don't want to project it onto you. So I would appreciate, if I kind of just can be in my bubble. I'm going to go take a shower and I'm going to, and then I can come and we can connect and we can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about or whatever. She has to.
I love that, Janie, because actually, the communication part of that, right, is key. And that we hear this all the time, how important this is in relationships, whether it be a friendship or with your kids, and especially in a marriage, it's so vital. And like you said, we get careless with that communication. Then all of a sudden, the woman just assumes that the husband knows what she's thinking. The husband just assumes that the woman knows that he needs a break. And so, being able to be like completely open and honest and saying, I love you, but right now I need 10 minutes,
Yes.
and to get into that routine of actually communicating your, like you said, your energy, your vibe, what's going on for the day, and being okay with that, because we're not perfect all the time. Life is not perfect all the time. And we're supposed to be in this relationship to grow together, and not apart. And so I think that plays a big part of it, into actually saying, you know what? I love you, but I can't deal right now. Just give me 10,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And you know, it goes back to that stress. As a mindfulness coach, I help people with stress management. And there's a lot of different areas in our life that bring stress. And a lot of our stress is actually self-induced through our thoughts and our behaviors and our actions. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that I help people with is get accountable. And that's part of REAL is an acronym. I'm a geek with acronyms. I love God. God speaks to me in acronyms. He's the one that gave me safe. He's the one that gave me real. Like, you know, so it's
Break it
awesome.
down. What is real?
So real, to be real, you have to understand what it means to be responsible. And there's some things that we talk about there, right? Being responsible. What does that look like? E is empathy, understanding what empathy is. And when we experience a lot of trauma between 0 and 7, all your belief structures are basically being programmed. You know what I mean? All that's happening. And it's really important for those that dealt with a lot of fear and abuse or trauma or just a lot of instability and stuff. That part of their brain to feel actually hurts. It hurts to feel. And so the brain is amazing. It's adaptable, it's malleable. You can look up neuroplasticity. But basically, the mirror neurons, the part of our brain that has, I go like this because I think it's like somewhere up here. I love studying the brain. That like it's kind of like when you watch a movie and you're not in the movie, but you're watching a scary movie and you're feeling like, oh, and you start to get those sensations. Or
Yeah.
if you're watching, I know this is kind of gross, but if you're watching somebody get sick and they're throwing up, if you watch too long, you might end up throwing up. And it's like, well, you're not sick. What's going on? Why are you doing that? Those are called mirror neurons. That's something really unique that human beings have. But people that dealt with a lot of pain and trauma, they get that part sort of atrophies. And so that can be put back online, but that takes some practice. And unfortunately, in our society, the men have really been disconnected from the feeling part and their heart and things like that. And so I'm not saying that they're heartless, okay? I'm just saying that having that compassion and that empathy and being able to feel for another person is very much sort of feminine energy. And boys are spoken to in such a way that makes them feel silly for feeling or for expressing themselves. So it starts to get shut down and beat
Right.
out of them really quickly. And it sucks for us because then they grow up wanting to be in relationships, but not really. They do, but when it comes to all that is involved, it makes them very uncomfortable and they don't even know why. And then they start hating women. And really what it is they're disconnected from their own femininity and or they've got distortions with the mother role model, and it's being projected. They have their own fear and own disconnection. So when it shows up outside of them, they either fight it or they run. They shut down or they yell and talk
Oh,
until
so they're in this mode.
yeah, exactly. And it can go the other way around. So there's men that are more heart-centered, more right-brainy communicate, more right-brainy when it comes to communication and expressing self. There with a woman, because different energies will attract each other, and then she'll show up like that. Because I work with couples, and it's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome, but it's awesome to see that it's not gender related. It really is just about how were you raised and what are you comfortable with. So empathy is huge because that has to do with understanding and seeing where another person's coming from, despite the discomfort that it may have caused you. At the end of the day, there's this Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh or something like that. He's so great. I'm not sure if he passed away. I think he might have, but he spoke of listening, like active listening and compassionate listening. And it's to master communication is to not only become a skilled communicator, but it's also to be a skilled listener and to to listen for the person's pain, hear their pain. Now it sucks because sometimes you're going to be the one to inflict the pain. And I teach people, how do we have safe talks where we're conveying, listen, this may not have been your intention, but when you said this and this is how it made me feel. And this is what I thought. Can you fill in the gaps? Is it accurate? You know,
Right.
it's like you said, we're making assumptions all the time and we have to be able to do that. But in order to do that, you have to learn how to have these conversations from a place of observation and reflection, not shame and blame. You can't attack a person. Sometimes we're creating a story in our head and that's not even really what's happening. And let me tell you, there's a major issue in this world, especially in the Western world, with narcissism. A lot of couples are finding themselves in this sort of narcissistic empathic dynamic. And that was something, and look, we all have a little bit of narcissism narcissism in us, but it's a spectrum. Okay. And there are some people that are very extreme in that area, and it's very difficult to be in a relationship with them and navigating through that. So I feel like I was dealing with that on a certain level. And so anyway, that's empathy. A is accountability. A also is about learning how to have an attitude of atonement. People that struggle, remember, this goes back to humility. If you hate saying sorry when you're wrong, if you hate being wrong, don't get in a relationship, please. Okay, you guys, you're gonna hurt each other's feelings. Look, you know how people say it takes two to tango? Well, if you watch Dancing with the Stars or something like that, these people are they're so awesome, but they show you the behind the scenes of the practice, and they're stepping on each other's toes and they're fighting, and but before it can be beautiful, you've got to go through that process, you know? And so when both people are in it to master communication, master unconditional love, there's some basics that you need to know and feel comfortable practicing on a daily basis, because this isn't just something you go to a weekend and you learn it and then you practice it for a little. No, this is like every day. Mindfulness practice.
It's almost like, so it's just like going to the gym. People think, oh, I'll just go to the gym for a couple of weeks and I'll be fine for life. I'll be fit for life. But no, it's a muscle you have to keep practicing. So just like this, making it work. And actually, like you said, I love how you say that you're always continuously growing and training yourself because you want to become better. You want to get to the next level. And now you have someone in your life that is on that same path. And I think that's a beautiful thing where two of you guys, partnered up to go towards the same type of a goal. So therefore, you guys get to share in your wins and you get to share in your losses and support each other as you continue growing. And I think that's actually a good thing for us single girls out there who actually want to be in a relationship in the future, that we can start thinking about these things now. And it's like, okay, so how do I want to show up? How am I going to respond? How am I going to communicate? And start practicing, because like you said, practicing is the key. We got to practice right now, and we can do that. So I love that.
Yeah. And these things are things like you said earlier, talking about friendship. This safe communication that I'm talking about, this applies with all relationships, even friendships. And that's another thing that's lacking in this country. It's like we're forgetting what it means to be friends. Like girls tell me about, oh, my friends did this and said this. And I'm like, they're your friend? Like, that's a friend? Like, we need to identify what does friendship look like? And that needs to be the blueprint and the template for your relationship. L, by the way, is loyalty. What does it mean to be loyal? If you're REA, L is like, you can have a loyal, long lasting, loving relationship. There are all your L's right there. Right? So, and it goes really beautifully and it fits beautifully into safe. Safe is about how to honestly and effectively communicate your wants, your needs, your concerns, your insecurities, your fears, your desires, all of this stuff. Like, it's about transparency. So S is seek the truth. You have to seek the truth first within yourself to understand, why do you want what you want? Why do you show up the way you show up? Why do you have these particular triggers? Your triggers might be a little bit different than your partner's, but what's another thing that's really interesting that I loved helping couples with is just witnessing their hypocrisy. Oh my God, so much hypocrisy. I always talk about, hey, there's always the yin and the yang to everything. So when you do that to her, she feels this. And he's not getting it. And I'm like, and I can find, like, that's kind of like that same feeling you feel when she does this and this to you.
Right. But they don't see it that way.
And we don't, that's why all I'm here as a mindfulness coach is, I'm just here to help you see things from a different perspective and help you reframe things so that you can start also using different language. That's another thing. People, this is something that Justin and I, my partner, he practices this. Sometimes in his language, he can be real abrasive or real aggressive and stuff. And it's like, hey, you can say that and express yourself, but here's like a different way that you could do it that would resonate and sit better with me. I'm not going to tell him what he has to do. It's more of a request. And then that's what we do. We make requests. We don't command. We don't demand. As a woman, one of the ways that women can show up better, for men is if and when they do come and are vulnerable, we need to listen, be careful and gentle. I've seen women just berate men for being sad or crying or, being a little bit worried. And it's like men should have the room to be able to feel that too. And their partnership should be a sanctuary where they can come and surrender into that space safely.
Absolutely. Yeah,
100%.
I agree with that.
And also too, people complaining and like nitpicking and being really hard on our partners. There's bullying that goes on inside a partnership. That's not
Yep.
being a friend. It's not being a friend. So I just help people clean up their language. It's like some people, they can be together. They just don't know how to be together. They would be great together and they have so much potential, but both people have to want to reach that potentiality together. They have to want the same thing. And that was what was so painful for me, was that I really wanted all that and I couldn't believe that he didn't. I was like, oh my God, are you
So,
kidding me?
Janie, do you see this? Do you see that it's more men that want to change or women that want to change, or is it just a 50-50 split usually if you're sitting down with a couple? I mean, is it typically harder to get men on board, or is it harder to get women on board? Or like you said, does it matter? It depends on the situation and that person and that experience that they're dealing with.
Yeah, in my experience, and this isn't to say that this is what the stats are like for real, but it really has been 50-50. I've had couples come where it's the woman that's cheated and she's not in it and she's the bully, and she can't see what's going on and she's not willing to bend. There's a lot of control issues, that go on. And then it goes the other way around too. So I think it really is just person to person. And I think it's important that people know you don't, I believe in the sanctuary of marriage. I think that also needs to be redefined and understood because people don't realize that when you partner up with someone, especially in marriage where you're saying, oh, I want to do this for forever, that's a long time.
That is a long
time. And you have to leave room for, change and growth. But if you reach a point like I did in my life where this relationship was actually holding me back from all that I was really supposed to be doing, and sometimes people are afraid to walk away, especially for religious reasons, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. It is unfortunate. There's a lot of emotions and trauma that comes along with divorce that I think I also help people through that process too, but that we need to handle it gently and be patient and do it properly so that when we enter the next relationship, we can go into it wiser and we won't have to repeat the same patterns and cycles. And that's what people do. People think the grass is greener on the other side. Sure thing. Your shadow and your ego, you can't run away from it. It's going to creep back up. So you might as well face your fears, face your dragons. If you're going to go into a relationship and you want to do it right, then you've got to go in and look at all that yucky stuff you have inside of you and reconcile it, And if you're lucky, like I am right now, I wouldn't be in a relationship right now if I knew that he wasn't able and willing to do it. And it hasn't been an easy process. However, it's been totally worth it. And so anyway, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful to have someone who is here to uplift me, to support me, because that was the other thing. I'm very much an encourager. Like you, we talked about this the other day. She was on my show P3. You got to go check out her episode. I have a platform called @Rise Above TV. You can search it. It's all about empowering humanity and supporting unity. And Rebecca is one of those individuals that has tapped into her power, passion, purpose. And so she had a lot of beautiful things to say. And her and I are on the same page about the kind of life that we want to live. If we're going to follow a career path, it's like we want to have zest and enthusiasm for it. We want it to thrive. We want it to be delicious. And that's the kind of love that I wanted to have too. So, yeah. Safe, seek the truth, accept accountability, responsibility, free your mind. We have to free our mind from some of the things of the past and go into that basement and that attic that people don't really like to go into that are creepy and see what's in there. And then, and it's awesome once you do that. And these are things that this safe sort of steps you flex. Each time you have to have a safe talk. First, you have to seek the truth, do that individually. And then how do you convey that to each other, especially if y'all had an argument? And that's been a difficult thing, like knowing when to kind of be quiet, step away. They say it takes about 15-20 minutes for the nervous system to settle down because when we get angry, the amygdala and the adrenals get set off, and we've got adrenaline and cortisol and norepinephrine pumping through us. And so when you're both angry, it's like two drunk people or two kids trying to speak to each other, and it's next to impossible. So it's better just to, that's another one of those little things that you need to do to help you have a safe relationship. But once you can do S and F, E is about expressing and expanding your heart and living and leading in love, like living and leading from that space. And that's what you want to bring into your partnership, especially if the two of you guys are going to have kids or you already have kids. We don't want this generational trauma and this generational paradigm of toxic relationships to continue to move forward, because relationships are such a big part of our lives. And if that's not bueno and that's all yucky and it's all, then of course it's going to get spread over to the kids. They're going to grow up and then they're just going to do the same thing. So all of us need to care about our mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, our physical health, and the health of our partnerships, because they really are, they do make a big difference in your immunity. If you want to be healthy, then you want to have healthy friendships and you want to have a healthy partnership.
I love that, Janie, that you said, make sure we actually, it starts with us and it ends with us. We want to make sure that we're being a good example for our kids, right? That's huge. And me as a mom, when I went through my divorce, my kiddo unfortunately had to see her mom, just completely broken down. And it was one of the most terrible things ever I experienced. But unlike, sometimes I think that moms feel we have to hide everything around, especially with our kids, and to sugarcoat things. But to be honest with you, I'm kind of glad that she was able to see me in that state, because, that's the world. We have to kind of be a little tough. Also, for this reason too, is that's actually where I found God, was in the middle of my divorce. And she was able to see God actually heal her mom and heal my broken heart, and to put my life back together in such a bigger and brighter way than it was before. She got to see a miracle. She witnessed a miracle. And so I always try to find the beauty in stuff. It says in the Bible where God, he can take the ashes and bring something beautiful out of it, and create a masterpiece out of it, right? And so I think it's always great to see the positive in that. And it also, I'm so glad that I was able to do that, because since I did take the time to heal, like you said, properly, I took the time I needed to be able to clear out the attic and the basement, all that stuff that you're saying. That it was like it put me in this position where I was actually open to the idea of getting married again. And I was like, oh, wow, and I was like, I felt like lighter and open and hopeful. And I hope that our stories can, resonate with the women out there who have either, gone through a divorce or in the middle of one, that there is still hope, and that we can, heal, and we can help each other move forward. And I think it's great that you actually help in that process, Janie, that with your relationship coaching and mindfulness coaching, and helping people learn how to speak better and to listen better and to work together better. Partner. I wonder what do you know what the real definition of partner is? I don't even know. What is that? There's got to be something in there.
There's got to be. I love researching like the etymology of words and things like
right?
that. You know what I mean? And
to me,
so
it's got to be like togetherness. You're doing this together. You're not one over here and one over there. You're in it to win it. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you want to know, you have to be able to yoke within your own self, like it's like that unify yourself, the human spirit, the mind, body, heart, soul, the right and left brain. It's like all this stuff needs to be harmonized. And the more you're able to do that, the more you can bring that into partnership. But, a lot of us aren't doing that kind of work. And that's why the relationships look the way they do. So, and also too, that union with your partner, it's knowing how to it's like mindfully maneuvering through these waters that are not always like cool and calm. Life's going to throw him a curveball sometimes, me a curveball sometimes he needs to be the anchor and I'm the one that's all like, oh, you know what I mean, or vice versa. And it's really beautiful when we can do that for one another. But first we need to know, like, how that anchor, who's your anchor first and foremost. You got to be yours. And then obviously that also comes from like God. And I think when in a couple, there's like this. I also marry people, by the way. So that's one of my other jobs is I get to marry people. And my course,
Awesome.
yeah, and my course that I have, when people complete it, it's part of a premarital program that Together in Texas here has. They have like a healthy marriages program. So, and I give that away for free. So if anybody's interested, awesome, come, just write me and I'll send you the ebook. It's a little ebook with a Q&A. And I forgot what I was saying right before that. I kind of went on a tangent on it about working together and finding how to complement one another and knowing what each other's strengths and weaknesses are and knowing how to work with that. The yin yang forces are not opposing forces. They're complementary, but you have to understand how to rise above all the bullshit and see things for what it is so that you can create that type of synergy with your partner. And of course, then that makes you a power couple, and then other couples and other people, not just couples, but singles and stuff, can see what it is that you're emulating, like what it is that you're embodying, and they can emulate that.
Right. That is so awesome. Janie, I know you're in San Antonio, Texas. I'm in North Carolina, for those who don't know. And so reach out to Janie. And then how else can they find you? I'll have everything about the event that you're having tomorrow in the show notes. But
Okay.
as far as online, how can they find you? How can they find out more about what you do?
Okay, great. They can go to JanieTerrazas.com. And if they go there, there's a place where they can enter their email to be a part of my community. And in that first email, they get a Jumpstarter, the Know Thyself Jumpstarter kit. It's like 9 things everybody needs to know about themselves because the most important relationship you're having is the one with yourself. And that stuff plays into partnership stuff. So they can get that for free. And it also comes with the 7 positive daily habits. These are real simple, practical things you can do. Just, make sure you stay centered. And then as far as social media, they can search Janie, the Mindfulness Coach, Janie, the Mindfulness Coach. People always want to put 2 L's in mindfulness, but it's just one.
We went over a lot today. We went over words and acronyms and word letters and crazy stuff, definitions,
I know.
the brain, the body. I love it. I love all this stuff. I love how passionate you are about, everything, not just on one level. There's so many different levels. And that's why I love having people on the show because I'm learning something new all the time. And I get to feed off this energy that you have. And I'm learning something new all the time. So Janie, you're amazing. Continue to be amazing and to help the world with you, and share the world, share your light with the world and continue rocking it out. Thank you so much for being on my show. I feel so lucky to have you.
I love you. Thank you. And thank you for having me on, and continued success on all of your endeavors. And for everybody watching, be well, be mindful, be kind. That's what we need more of right now is love so that we can be united. We must find the beauty in our diversity. We can find unity in diversity. And that's really important right now. So I just wanted to wish everybody well.
Yes, Facebook. Thank you for joining us today. We rocked it out. And Janie, you have an amazing day. Bye, Facebook.
Bye. Thanks for seeing us.